Qualified, professional, and compassionate doctors talking real solutions to real health problems.
I'm called Medad, working with Sky Medical Center in Namongona. Here in Namongona, we receive about 20 clients to 30 complain of headaches, backache, general body weakness, abdominal pain, which is always generalized. Some do complain with cough, which is always mild. When tested for typhoid, it is always positive, and most of them are not aware that they do have typhoid. About 25% of those tested positive for typhoid do not complete their treatment. Some of the reasons why most people don't complete their medications and some others don't get treatments is because they claim it is always expensive and some can't afford, so eventually running away. And others, when given treatment, they tend to default and don't complete their medications, eventually becoming carriers. After a short while, they come back. When tested for typhoid, it is always too much and positive. My message to the community and to my people who live in Namongona is to always wash their hands before food and after using toilets. You'd always manage waste, proper waste disposal, also domestic waste and human waste. Should always have toilets and should, if possible, avoid eating street foods. Therefore, I appeal to the government to calm down the communities and do sensitization and educate the people living in these communities about typhoid fever and its dangers.
You are watching the Doctalk show.
So typhoid fever is a very common infection. It has been with us for a long time, and it is caused by a bacterium called Salmonella. So I want to find out how common is typhoid in the world. Does it cause so many problems globally as it does in Kampala? Dr. Fiona, you're a public health expert in this field. So numbers are your
Yes, numbers are our life because we make all the decisions based on numbers.
Exactly.
Without statistics, you don't tell us that we have typhoid.
How big is typhoid?
So generally, globally, we have about 20 million cases of typhoid every year.
Occurring each year. 20 million people.
20 million. That is half the population of Uganda getting typhoid.
Okay.
That is global.
That's quite a very, very big number. And does it cause any deaths or worries?
Oh, yes. And we have it's about 160,000 deaths occurring. To bring it back home, our biggest outbreak, we have outbreaks, typhoid outbreaks almost annually because of our rainy seasons, and then we have not gotten rid of the high density areas where most people are. So our biggest outbreak so far in Uganda was in 2015, where we had over 10,000 suspected cases of typhoid. We had a number of complications and hospitalizations and, of course, deaths. And what was interesting about that outbreak is that it occurred within the capital, Kampala, not in some of course, up country, we rarely have those high density where people are living in conditions. And of course, this was Chisenyi. This was
in the area. It was actually the greater Kampala, but I remember Chisenyi was one of the
health facility that yes, and that is where we thank God for UPDF, because when we have such crises, then they bring in the UPDF, and because they have all the expertise, they run this outbreak and managed it very well. I'll give you an example also. Recently in Zimbabwe, in the capital city in Harare, they had one of the biggest typhoid outbreaks we've had in Africa. And like I mentioned before, typhoid and cholera are twins, are relatives. They are all spread through feces, getting into the mouth, and clean water and all like that. So in Harare, they had a cholera outbreak that then got accentuated with a typhoid outbreak.
So there are two outbreaks.
running
which are
in the
very
same
similar,
places
in the same places.
at the same time.
And I bet the risk factors are still the same.
They were the same.
Problems of water and sanitation and contaminated food and the likes.
Of course.
Just like the one which happened in Kampala about 3-4 years ago.
Yes. So, and then the statistics are also very clear. For people who are treated, even when you get to a health facility and get your treatment, 1 to 4% still die.
From complications.
From complications. For those who are untreated and stay at home, 2 out of every 10 people will die.
So it's quite a that's 1 out of 5. So out of 5 people have typhoid. If they are not treated, you're going to lose.
Yes,
at least 1 or 2
20%,
people.
1 out of every, So, and this is a disease that is highly preventable. We don't even need to do anything spectacular.
Which is a very sad thing. It's a water sanitation disease.
Yeah.
No wonder it's still called the disease of poverty.
Yeah.
Because if we can improve the
Water and
sanitation levels within the community, diseases like cholera, typhoid, and other diarrheal diseases can all be kicked out.
Of course, yes.
The country.
And again, the Ministry of Water and Environment needs to take their work very seriously. Otherwise, then we cannot do the prevention as the health sector. All we can do is health education, but then it is difficult to then, we can't put pipes, we can't do pipe to water, we can't do all that on their behalf.
But I'm sure we'll get there. Steady progress will eventually come.
Of course, as a middle-income country, very soon, we shall, this will be like US in 1900, we shall get rid of these diseases.
Exactly. Where the US was in the 1900s is probably where Uganda is now. So with time, we shall eliminate typhoid
in a millennium.
But no, moving on. How does one know that they have typhoid? Is now the big question.
Yes, that's a big question, because I think that is where we do all the misdiagnosis, where people come in and say they have typhoid. One, the truth is that typhoid may look like malaria. You come in with high fevers, someone is feeling quite sick, with abdominal pain, some will be vomiting, and I'm sure you've seen all these kinds of headache. Then because it affects also multiple organs, you have yellow eyes.
Yeah, when it goes to the liver, and may cause some even bone pains, can have infections of the heart, of the lungs,
of the brain.
Worst case scenario, the brain. All right, so it tends to be a very aggressive disease, just like malaria. The symptoms are very common: high fevers, the temperature is shooting very high. Each day, things are
they
getting
start even
worse.
coughing, and you don't even know.
Exactly. Some people get cough, but I think the common symptoms that people should be aware of, the fevers, abdominal pain, and headaches.
Yes.
Usually those 3 tend to move together for any case of typhoid. And the sad bit is many diseases have the same
symptoms.
Okay, it can be a normal stomach infection, can be a malaria, can be pneumonia.
I don't know.
And in the African Tradition Society, we can't eliminate witchcraft. But yes, so those 3 symptoms resemble typhoid.
But again, it is very important that before anybody takes any treatment, they are diagnosed so that they are treated for the right disease. In the coming few sections, we shall be talking about antimicrobial resistance, because we come out of the hospital, or you come from home and just go straight to the pharmacy and say, I have typhoid, and buy antibiotics, and we've led the whole population to a very difficult situation right now.
So to put a perspective into the severity of typhoid, people may not know, they may not realize that typhoid is a big deal. So what if someone gets a high-grade fever, cough, some stomach pain? They can take Panadol and sleep it off. So what would go wrong if typhoid is not treated?
Oh, then that's when we run into complications.
Those are now the very big complications of typhoid.
Of typhoid that we have.
Can be as disastrous as malaria, as the pneumonia. It's actually,
I think, a little bit more aggressive, because like we mentioned, it can go to the brain, and then someone starts being uncoordinated, and then
they get confused, they become delirious.
They start seeing things that don't happen, that are not happening.
Exactly, and where will they take them?
Of course, to the witch doctor.
Straight to Butabika.
Of course, with psychiatry.
An actual typhoid illness causing the symptoms.
And by the time they are diagnosed there, because for them, unless the person still has high-grade fever, then it becomes a bit complex for Butabika Hospital, which deals with mental health illnesses, to to diagnose such illnesses.
Exactly. There are some of the cases in which it can be misdiagnosed or misinterpreted. Someone who is confused, talking words which you don't understand, seeing things which are not there, these psychotic symptoms, that is a very worrying complication of typhoid. It means that bacteria has entered the head and it's causing serious illnesses.
And actually, before it enters the head, one of the commonest complications of typhoid is in the intestines, because this bacterium actually lives in the intestines.
Yes, in the GI, in the gastrointestinal,
alimentary canal. That is what we yes, because you ingest it and you take it through your mouth. So by the time it gets out, it has caused harm in there. So one of the biggest complications then is intestinal perforation. It causes your perforation. It can puncture your intestines and then cause severe bleeding. Then some people come up,
pain,
of course, yes.
You fall into shock, and that's one of the most important causes of death. People die from shock, severe pain, they're bleeding inside, and if they're not operated as soon as possible, they might lose their lives.
And sometimes the bleeding starts in a minor way that we may not actually tell that it's that's whatever is happening. You see someone with black stool, they pass stool and it is black in color. Yet
it's a sign they're bleeding.
It means, yes, you're bleeding somewhere. By the time it gets out, it has already become black. It's no longer red. So those are some of the complications of typhoid. And there are many more complications.
Maybe not to forget, for example, the story of Typhoid Mary. It can become a chronic case.
Oh, yes.
All right, so that chronic means the infection persists usually longer than 6 months, is what they term for most chronic infections. So someone keeps on having typhoid, and this may explain why people keep on falling sick of typhoid. It might be a case that they are a chronic carrier.
And these ones keep spreading it.
Yes, and those are the important causes. Those are the people who keep spreading, keep causing outbreaks, just like we saw in the story of Typhoid Mary. Yes.
So I think when we are back from the break, we shall see how exactly should typhoid be diagnosed. You coming from your house in the morning and coming to work and telling everybody, oh, I think I have typhoid, is not a diagnosis of typhoid. You going to some strange lab in some place behind in your town center and them telling you it is typhoid. We want to know what tests have they done.
That's a very controversial issue which you shall explain in detail. Send in your questions and comments on our social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter. You can also subscribe and like our YouTube videos. That's on YouTube, of course, the Doctalk Show. We are always happy to hear from you. Don't go away.
You are watching the Doctalk Show.